At the family meeting, my father beat me in front of everyone, not with shame, not with words, with a belt and a look that said, "You brought this on yourself." All I'd said was, no. No, I wouldn't fold my brother's underwear. No, I wouldn't scrape dried ketchup off his midnight snack plates. No, I wouldn't be the maid they raised me to be. "You're a girl," my mother snapped. "You serve him. He's a boy. He deserves better." That moment should have broken me. It didn't. It completed me. I stood up and walked out. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe it was, and I just didn't know it had a name. People used to say our house was perfect. They'd drive by and marvel at the white shutters, the sparkling windows, the manicured lawn. My mom would smile tight-lipped from the porch. My dad would nod like a king surveying his kingdom. And Caleb, my brother, he'd be lounging on the steps, earbuds and shirt crisp, like he had a personal valet. No one ever looked at me. They never asked who ironed those shirts, who polished the floors, who knew exactly how Dad liked his coffee 3 sugars, 1 cream mug warmed in the microwave first. That was me, always me. From the time I was 8, I knew one thing. In our house, love wasn't free. Love was labor. Usefulness was the only thing that kept you from becoming invisible. And I was very useful. They didn't teach me how to be happy. They taught me how to be necessary. I was the one who woke before sunrise to prep the kitchen. The one who scrubbed Caleb's soccer stains out of white uniforms like they were sins to be erased. The one who knew how to make a meal stretch because "we feed you" was Mom's favorite guilt weapon when leftovers were all I got. My name is Hannah Whitmore, and for most of my life I was the system holding that house together, a ghost that made everything function but never got thanked, not once. When Caleb failed a test, it was my fault for not tutoring him. When Caleb yelled at Mom, it was my fault for not setting a better example. When Caleb left dishes on the counter, I cleaned them, because that's what girls do. That's what good daughters do. "You're not here to argue, Hannah," my father would say, voice cold and heavy. "You're here to contribute." That word contribute was supposed to make me feel proud. Instead, it felt like a leash, a collar disguised as praise. Mom would fold her arms like she was quoting gospel and say, "Girls keep the house running." That's just how it is. And I believed her. For a long time, I really did. Because I thought if I worked hard enough, cleaned faster, smiled more, stayed quiet longer, they'd see me. They'd love me. But love didn't live in that house. Control did. Caleb was the crown. Dad was the judge. Mom was the enforcer. And I was the silence. The hands. The backbone no one noticed until it stopped bending. There were phrases they repeated so often they became scripture. Be useful. Know your place. He's a boy. You'll understand when you're older. I understand now. Not because I got older, but because I saw them. Saw the pattern. It was never about helping. It was never about love. It was about keeping me small enough to manage, but strong enough to mop up the mess. Whenever I showed emotion, Mom would scoff, "Don't be dramatic." Whenever I stood up for myself, Dad would growl, "No one will tolerate that attitude in the real world." They didn't raise me to be a person. They raised me to be palatable, folded, quiet, clean. But while they barked orders, I started listening and writing. It started with a cheap notebook, the kind I bought during back-to-school sales. I hid it in the lining of my backpack. Every page became a receipt, not for groceries, but for everything I gave them that they never gave back. I wrote, "Made Dad's coffee, 6:00 a.m., cleaned Caleb's bathroom, again, took blame for Caleb's broken iPad, skipped dinner so Caleb could have seconds, apologized for crying when no one remembered my birthday, page after page, not to keep score, to remind myself I existed, that I was real, that I did everything." The weight of it was heavy, but it felt honest, like stitching up a wound I didn't know I had. And the more I wrote, the less afraid I felt. They thought they were teaching me obedience. What they really taught me was strategy. What they thought was breaking me was building me. I stopped crying in front of them, stopped defending myself. I just watched, wrote, waited, because storms don't scream as they build. They gather quietly. And I was almost ready. The day they called a family meeting, I already knew it wasn't about unity. In our house, those meetings weren't conversations. They were sentencing hearings. And I was always the defendant. I remember the room exactly. Dad in his recliner command posture legs spread belt already on the table like a warning. Caleb stretched across the couch, one sock on smirking like he already knew the verdict. Mom stood arms crossed like a prison warden about to hand out time. Sit, Dad said. I didn't. I knew the rules. Sit, nod, apologize even if you didn't understand what you were being punished for. But something in me refused. Maybe it was the months of unspoken rage coiled in my gut. Maybe it was the image of Caleb's socks tossed in the hallway while I limped from cleaning. Or maybe it was the notebook in my backpack. You haven't been doing your part, Mom said, tilting her head with that disappointed librarian voice she'd perfected over the years. Caleb says his laundry's piling up. His bathroom's a mess. She actually sounded offended. He says you've been slacking. I blinked. He's 17, I said, voice flat. He can fold his own damn shirts. Dad's hand twitched. Caleb's smirk stretched wider. Mom's jaw clicked tight. Watch your tone, she hissed. He's a boy. He deserves better than this. And there it was. That word again. Deserves. He deserves clean clothes, she said. He deserves peace in his home. And I asked. I cook. I clean. I do everything. And it's never enough, is it? You're a girl. Dad said the words sharp as ice. You were raised to serve. That's how the world works. No, I replied quietly. That's how your world works. A beat of silence. I'm not doing his laundry anymore. Or yours. Or hers. I pointed at Caleb. Then Mom. That was it. The moment it broke. Dad stood. Sudden. Fast. Like a trigger had been pulled. And my body, without meaning to, took one step back. That single step told him everything. Told him I was afraid. Told him I still remembered what the belt felt like when it found skin. Do his laundry. Or get out, he said, voice rising. I didn't move. So he did. He lunged. Not with hesitation, not with regret, with purpose. The belt was already in his hand, looped once around his fist like he'd practiced it. And then crack. It hit my back like lightning. I didn't scream, didn't flinch, didn't fall. I just stared. The second hit landed on my shoulder, the third across my forearm. I staggered. My knees buckled, but I kept my eyes on him. You've forgotten your place, he shouted. And the most horrifying part, Caleb didn't move. Mom didn't blink. They weren't surprised. They were satisfied. Because to them, this wasn't abuse. This was discipline, correction, maintenance. They didn't see a daughter. They saw a broken tool. When it stopped, or when he got tired, I straightened. I didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't scream. I just said, I'm not your servant. And then I walked out. No suitcase, no dramatic door slam, no goodbye, just my hoodie, a bruised arm, and the notebook zipped inside my backpack. That was it, and I wanted the silence to be the loudest thing they ever heard. I walked 2 miles. The night air tasted like metal and adrenaline. Every step away from that house felt like I was learning how to breathe again. When I reached Amara's porch, my best friend since 6th grade, I didn't even knock. Her porch light was on. Always was. She opened the door, took one look at me, didn't ask a single question. She just said, come in. And that night, I slept on a yoga mat in a corner with a balled-up hoodie as my pillow. My ribs ached, my back pulsed. But for the first time in years, no one expected anything of me. No one asked for a chore. No one demanded a smile. No one reminded me of my place. I was just Hannah, and I was still breathing. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes. Not just the smell, but the sound. Laughter in the kitchen, a spatula scraping softly on a hot pan. Amara's mom humming off-key to the radio. It didn't feel real. I sat at the table like an intruder, still braced for some demand, some question, some quiet reprimand like back home. Instead, she placed a plate in front of me, warm pancakes, maple syrup, even a few berries. "You okay staying a few days?" she asked gently. I nodded. She looked at my arms, swollen and discolored. More than a few, that was it. No lecture, no guilt, just space. They cleared out a corner of the storage room, laid down a spare mattress, set up a thrifted dresser and a reading lamp. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. And in those first quiet days, I waited for the apology, the angry call, the fake concern, anything. My phone stayed silent. No? Are you safe? No, come home. No, we miss you. Just the same silence they always forced on me. But this time, it was mine, and I was about to weaponize it. That night I pulled out my notebook, the one with the scribbled records and tear-stained corners. I opened to a blank page. At the top I wrote, things I did before they said I wasn't enough. I listed the obvious ones: cooked 3 meals a day, cleaned Caleb's bathroom, ironed school uniforms, packed lunchboxes since I was 11, grocery runs in the rain. Then came the deeper ones, hid my straight A report card so Caleb's C- didn't feel bad, took the blame when he dented Mom's car, stayed up reheating dinner for Dad after long shifts while studying for finals, washed my own blood out of the laundry after Mom's backhand caught a ring. It didn't stop. 10 pages, then 20. It was a record. But more than that, it was a ledger, not of money, but of labor, of time, of dignity, of me. Every entry whispered the same truth they owed me, not in dollars, in decency, and they were never going to pay it. That realization hit like cold water, the grief of it, the clarity. They weren't coming to find me. They weren't looking to fix anything. They were hoping I'd return out of necessity, crawl back, submit. So I did what they feared most. I began preparing, silently. Step 1. Financial independence. With Amara's mom as a witness, I filed the paperwork, revoked my parents' access to my school records, medical files, emergency contacts. If they called the school, they'd be told I was legally independent. Step 2. Security. Got a new debit card in my name. Transferred every penny of my student savings, locked my phone line to prevent them from freezing it. Step 3, evidence. I scanned the bruises, photographed the belt mark that looped over my shoulder like a signature, not to start a war, but to have my truth filed and time-stamped. I wasn't looking for a fight. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wanted freedom with receipts. While they sat in that perfectly trimmed house expecting their ghost daughter to reappear, I was quietly, precisely disappearing. I stopped asking why they hadn't called, stopped replaying the meeting in my head, stopped waiting for guilt to bloom. I went to the community college 3 blocks away and filled out an application for the nursing program, met with a counselor, applied for aid, signed up for evening classes. During the day, I helped Amara's mom with errands, taught myself how to budget on a spreadsheet, took walks just to feel the sunlight. The bruises faded, the ache lingered, but in the place of pain, something else began to grow: sovereignty. Meanwhile, I heard the first cracks in their world, not from them, of course, from everyone else. Amara's cousin Maya lived 2 blocks from my old house. One afternoon, she texted me a photo. It was Caleb, outside the laundromat, looking furious, his arms wrapped around a trash bag full of wrinkled clothes. The system was already buckling, and I hadn't even said a word. I opened my notebook again. New title: What They Lose Without Me. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, quiet, a deterioration dressed in denial. 3 weeks passed, not a single call, not one text. The house I once served like clockwork carried on as if I never existed, or so they pretended. But pain leaves echoes. And when someone like me walks out, the walls remember. I got the first real update from Maya. She'd been at the grocery store when she saw my mom. She looked exhausted, she said. She asked the cashier for help bagging milk, said her back was out, but honestly, she just looked overwhelmed. I said nothing, just nodded. But that night, I opened my notebook again. Title Fractures. Caleb seen outside laundromat. 2 trash bags. Mom asking strangers for help lifting groceries. Dad late to work 3 times confirmed by neighbor Mrs. Ellison. Heard he snapped during a staff meeting. HR involved. They were unraveling, and I hadn't even touched them. The text came the next Friday. Mom, Caleb has an awards dinner this week. None of his suits are ironed. You need to stop being ridiculous and come home. No hello, no apology, just a demand disguised as a task. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. 4 days later, Dad. This is childish. No one will tolerate your behavior in the real world. Come home, apologize, and we'll let you earn your place again. Let me earn it. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound that startled even me. I took a screenshot, then another. Not for the police, not for social media, for me. A reminder, this is who they are, and this is who I am without them. By then I had enrolled full-time in the nursing program. I shared a room with a stack of library books and a mattress on the floor. I cooked what I could afford, studied late, took the bus, helped Amara's mom with chores, not because I was told, but because I was grateful. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every dish, every wrinkle, every late-night cramming session. And for the first time in my life, I was building something, not just cleaning up someone else's mess. Meanwhile, the Whitmore house was turning into a shell. Neighbors whispered. I know because Amara's mom heard them after Sunday service. They haven't seen Hannah in weeks. Did she get a job out of state? Linda looks off. Then Amara said it. They're telling people you left for an internship. An internship. They said you're working on your maturity, she added. She smirked, but I could see the sadness behind her eyes. Funny. Maturity was only praised when it suited their narrative. When I stayed up to wash Caleb's blood-soaked socks, no one called me mature. When I served dinner with bruised ribs, they said I had an attitude. But now that I was gone, I was mature. Let them lie. I wasn't going back. I didn't need their approval. Just a clean break. And so I started planning again. Not revenge, not confrontation. Just closure. I pulled out a box from the supply closet. Inside it, I placed every handwritten chore list they used to tape to the fridge. The birthday card where Mom wrote, "We didn't plan for you, but God has a purpose." The broken locket from my 13th birthday with the engraving, so you remember we didn't have to keep you. And then the notebook, 52 pages printed, bound, and labeled Unpaid Labor Years, 10 to 17. No note, no threat, just documentation, truth. Bound in silence. I taped the box shut, wrote the address in block letters, no return label. At dawn, I walked back to the house I once called home. My hoodie hood was up, my hands shaking not with fear but finality. I placed the box gently on the porch, not in anger, not in haste, like a ghost laying down her bones. Then I turned and left. 2 days later, Maya texted. They didn't come out for hours. When your dad finally opened it, he looked pale, like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. Good, because I wasn't loud. I wasn't violent, but I was exact. They spent years expecting me to fold. Instead, I folded evidence, proof of what happens when you train a girl to serve and she learns how to document everything. No headlines, no scandal. Just silence sharpened into truth. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't check for updates. I had already lived too long in their theater of guilt. Now I was the audience, and they could perform their silence for themselves. Instead, I moved forward. My studio apartment was barely bigger than the storage room I used to sleep in. One creaky floor. A mini fridge that buzzed like it had secrets. A shower that refused to pick a temperature. But when I walked in at the end of each day, I didn't brace for commands. I didn't listen for footsteps. I didn't flinch at the creak of floorboards. It was quiet. And that quiet didn't feel hollow. It felt earned. I worked part-time at a local bookstore. The pay was bad, but the air smelled like paper and independence. My co-workers called me by name, not girl. My schedule was my own. I folded my own laundry, cooked what I could afford, lit a candle every Friday. Not for memory, not for mourning, just because I could. Meanwhile, the Whitmore house began folding in on itself, not because I looked back, but because people talk. A girl from church messaged me. "Your dad collapsed in the cereal aisle at Kroger. They say it was stress, no diagnosis, just exhaustion, the kind that creeps in when your household backbone walks out." Amara's cousin ran into Caleb at a job fair. He was disheveled, angry, yelling at a volunteer because his resume had gotten creased. The crown had lost his throne. My mom. She joined a Facebook group called Parents of Ungrateful Children. She posted threads titled, "When They Forget Who Fed Them and the Daughter Who Thinks She's Better Now." They hadn't changed. They had just collapsed inward, curled around their own lies, choking on the silence I left behind. And I no longer needed their shame. I no longer needed them to regret, because I had something they'd never taught me how to want peace. A kind of peace that doesn't whisper, "You're failing." A kind of peace that lets me fold my own towel without resentment. That lets me open a window without asking. That lets me not perform. One afternoon, Amara asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" Even just to tell them off, I shook my head. "No," I said, "I already did." "What do you mean I gave them everything they ever asked for? And then I gave them exactly what they called me." What's that nothing? Because I didn't scream. I didn't broadcast. I didn't drop exposés online. I didn't film viral takedowns. I just stopped giving. No more energy, no more usefulness, no more me. I'd become the void they trained me to fill and then removed myself from it. And now they get to sit in it. Every Friday, I light that candle. It flickers in the corner of the room on a small shelf made from a milk crate and hope. I don't light it for revenge. I don't light it to forgive. I light it to remind myself that I am alive and I am no one's servant. Sometimes I wonder, does Caleb know how to boil water yet? Does Dad flinch when he sees a belt lying on a chair? Does Mom ever replay the sound of a box being set on the porch? I hope they do. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because I didn't burn their house down. I just took the warmth with me. And now, when they sit in the cold silence of what used to be control, they'll finally understand what I was worth. I passed by the old neighborhood once, not on purpose. I was walking back from class arms full of textbooks, the wind biting at my cheeks, and there it was, the Whitmore house, still white, still trimmed, still trying to look like a postcard, but something about it was off. The blinds hung crooked in the upstairs window. The porch light flickered like it couldn't decide whether to keep shining. And for the first time, I noticed how small the house looked, like a castle shrunk down to the size of its ego. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't glance at the porch where I'd left that box. I just kept walking, keys in my pocket, grocery list in my hand, candle in my bag. That walk home, it wasn't a march of defiance. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a quiet return to myself. They called me worthless. So I gave them exactly that. Not a scream, not a breakdown, not even an explanation. Nothing. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because they never deserved to hear it. Sometimes I think about the way they trained me to clean, to serve, to smile, to stay silent. And now I do clean. I serve myself. I smile for real. And silence, I still keep it. But not for them. Now it belongs to me. The truth is, they were right about one thing. I was never meant to be loud. Not in the way they feared. I wasn't the scream they prepared for. I was the absence they never saw coming. The footsteps that left and never came back. The hand that used to hold everything together, now folded in peace. They believed fear would keep me, but they never noticed what else they were building. A girl who knew how to survive on nothing. A girl who wrote things down. A girl who listened in silence until she became a storm they couldn't hear coming. I didn't get revenge. I got free. And sometimes that's the loudest victory of all. So if you're listening to this, if you've been the shadow in your own house, if you've been called difficult for daring to breathe differently, let me tell you this. You don't owe them your endurance. You don't owe them your peace. And silence doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it's a weapon. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the sound of you finally walking away. Have you ever walked away from the people who claim to love you just to find yourself breathing again? Drop your story in the comments. You never know who you'll inspire. And if this story made you feel seen, tap like, subscribe. And remember, you are not here to serve. You are here to live.